Hey, what's up, everybody? Straight Right Boxing Talk. I want to first take a minute to say thanks to everybody that's come by and uh, spent the time listening or interacting in the comments and whatnot. I really appreciate that. We're going to talk now about Joseph Parker and Hughie Fury, another really good heavyweight fight coming up. Parker, the WBO champ, 22-0, 18 knockouts. He's 6'4" with a 76-inch reach. Hughie Fury, 20-0, 10 knockouts. Stands 6'6" with an 80-inch reach. He's 22 years old. Parker is 25. In my opinion, they're two of the best young heavyweight prospects in the game. I like both fighters a lot personally. They're very different style-wise, which we're going to break down. I'm going to talk about their strengths and their weaknesses. And since Parker is the champion, I'm going to talk about how Hughie Fury can win this fight. The last three fights have been as follows. For Parker, he fought Solomon Homano July 21st, 2016, and it was a fourth round technical knockout. Then he had a third round knockout on October 1st against Alexander Dimitrenko, and then the majority decision win that got him the belt against Andy Ruiz, and that was a vacant belt from Tyson Fury. But that was on December 10th, 2016. For Hughie Fury, back on December 5th, 2015, he had a first-round technical knockout against Larry Olabamiwo. On March 26th, 2016, he had a 10-round points decision over Dominic Gwynn. And April 30th, 2016, he had a technical knockout against Fred Cassie. It was he won on points, I guess, because of a head clash that resulted in a cut. Technical decision, I guess. Their best wins, Parker, in my opinion, it's probably got to be that unanimous decision over Carlos Takam, May 21st, 2016. Takam was a very good fighter. That was a huge step up at that point for Parker. Takam's a guy that was very competitive with Alexander Povetkin in Russia. He was no slouch whatsoever, so that was a good win for Parker. Or you could say Ruiz was one of his best wins too, just because it got him the belt. And Ruiz is pretty underrated in my opinion. For his size, he's unbelievably quick, and he does a lot of good things in there. For Hughie Fury, it's really hard to say who his best win is. He's only 22, and he doesn't really have a resume full of world beaters, you know. So, and that's not to knock him. He's just young. He's still being brought up, and this opportunity presented itself, and you got to give the Furies credit for jumping on it. It's going to be an interesting fight. On to the strengths. Joseph Parker had a pretty good amateur background, and he barely missed out on the 2012 Summer Olympics. But his bread and butter is his explosive hand speed, especially for a heavyweight. He has unbelievably fast hands, and he actually carries solid power too. You could say it's been less evident as his opponents have improved. But he's only had two real, his last two fights have been the biggest challenges, and he didn't knock those guys out. But the type of thing happens. You go back and watch some of his other fights, like with Costa Jr., and he fucking knocked him out, just lights out. So he definitely carries solid power, more power than Fury for sure, at least to this point. But Joseph Parker is also very patient with his offense, and he's a very good combination puncher. And all that being said, he's also a very accurate puncher. Defensively, he has reasonable head movement when it's needed for a big man, which hasn't been terribly often. He also has reasonably good use of his feet to get himself out of danger. His jab is one of his best punches. It sets up the right hand, obviously. And he'll double and triple that jab too. He'll throw it to the body. It's a very effective weapon for him. He's a decent counterpuncher, which obviously is aided by his quick hands. He's getting better. Both of these guys are really still improving too. Joseph Parker has passed every test so far up the ladder. The last few have been a little close for comfort, but he's passed him. Something that might aid him in this fight against a taller fighter is that he seems to have fought more aggressively against taller fighters in the past. Now, that doesn't mean it's always going to work in his favor, but something to look out for in this upcoming fight. Parker's also very focused and unemotional during a fight. He doesn't panic regardless of if things aren't going his way. He seems very cool, and he's intelligent. You can see him thinking out there, and he also listens to Kevin Barry in the corner too. They seem like a pretty good team thus far, and he's been improving. So there are a lot of good things to like about Joseph Parker. Very exciting, young, up-and-coming heavyweight, and a champion at this point. So on to Hughie Fury. Hughie is a incredibly skilled back foot fighter. His back foot game is unreal. He's a big-time mover for a heavyweight. He's got fast feet. He's energetic. He throws really good angles at you, really good lateral movement. Never a stationary target. Fury himself won a gold medal at the Youth World Amateur Boxing Championships in 2012 at super heavyweight, amongst other credentials as an amateur. So he's obviously got the boxing skills, and that's been evident even as a pro. He's got a long jab that he uses constantly, offensively and defensively. Really, it's one of his best punches too. He controls range with that jab and with his feet to keep opponents at angles that are hard to attack from, and he'll smother guys on the inside too. He's a good body puncher as well, is Hughie Fury. Very good body puncher. He does it often, and he does it forcefully. On defense, he has excellent upper body movement. And another thing Hughie can do, like his brother, is he can switch his stance. And to top it off, his trainer, Peter Fury, in my opinion, is an excellent, excellent trainer. I really respect it. I know he's got a checkered past, but I listening to him on YouTube and doing interviews and whatnot with Coogan, Peter Fury really seems like a stand-up guy, and he's also a very bright boxing mind, in my opinion. On to some of their weaknesses now. Joseph Parker first. He hasn't really fought on that upper tier of world level, or even at world level, I guess, and you can say that of both guys, but Parker has clearly fought the better competition at this point. Obviously with Takam and with Andy Ruiz, they're not the best of the best, but they're definitely on that edge of world level, or somewhere around there. They're definitely stepping stones. He's moving up, and they both are, I guess. But at this point, you'd have to edge the resume to Parker. But Parker also has defensive deficiencies. He'll expose his chin during flurries, and he'll allow himself to get countered. He needs to get in the habit of gluing that backhand to his chin. He also doesn't cut the ring off exceptionally well. Even some low-level guys like Brian Minto have been able to circle and survive longer than they should have. But again, he's improving. These are just some things I've noticed. He also, early on especially, he didn't throw nearly enough body punches, but that has definitely improved. You could see against Ruiz, he was banging it to the body. His activity level is good, but he needs to pace himself, which I think he did against Ruiz. He seemed really winded against Takam at points. But again, it could be something they addressed. It seemed like it was improved in the Ruiz fight. His footwork as well is improving. Still not excellent. It's decent. And people I see are questioning his power now, if his power is legit. Because he didn't knock out Ruiz, he didn't knock out Takam, but that's yet to be seen. You don't go, whatever it was at one point, 18-0 with 16 knockouts. Regardless of who you fight, that proves that you've got power. He hasn't fought outside of New Zealand either, which might or might not matter, but that's something interesting. And this fight will continue that trend. Parker isn't really fast on his feet. His defensive instincts are decent, but they're not one of his strengths. overall, he seems too hittable at times. I do like what Dwyer said about him in one of his videos. Dwyer said Parker doesn't see the risk of having loose brakes because he's never been in a car crash. I like that. It was an interesting comment from him. On to Hughie Fury. Now, Hughie's had a skin condition that caused fatigue, and it's said to have been healed, but we're going to see. We're going to see what kind of difference that makes, how much of a difference it makes. Peter Fury, I've seen in recent interviews, has said that we're going to see a different Hughie this time out. We're going to see a lot of things we've never seen before. Now, what that can be is anybody's guess. Will he be more aggressive? Maybe. Do they expect him to hit a little harder? Who knows? I'm curious. It's another point that makes this fight fascinating. But overall, Fury is not a big puncher, and his technique is also off at times, punch-wise. We've yet to really see how he fights on the front foot either. So, I mean, Joseph Parker is a fairly patient fighter. What if he refuses to engage and he looks for Fury to lead the action? That's something I'm wondering what kind of shape the fight will take if that happens. Because Fury himself isn't overly assertive. He's the type of guy that kind of fights for points. He's happy to pile up points and beat you that way. He fights for points, not for pain, I guess you might say. Like Joseph Parker, too, he can also leave his chin exposed, sometimes throwing that right hand. And that's a bad idea, especially against somebody with hands as fast as Parker. And another thing working against Hughie is that by the time this fight rolls around, he'll have been out of action for almost a year. And that's a long time to be out of the ring. So is ring rust going to factor in? That remains to be seen. So these are two fairly different fighters here, considerably different. It's going to be fascinating to see how this fight plays out. What does Hughie Fury have to do to win? Well, Team Fury has stated that his health issues are in the past and that we're going to see a new fighter on May 6th in Auckland. But the old Fury himself has the skills to beat Parker, technically. If he uses his length and reach advantage and his advanced outside game against, the not especially quick-footed Parker, he can frustrate him with that constant jab, keep changing angles. And since Parker isn't really great at cutting the ring off, he can also be frustrated and made gun-shy by opponents like Hughie, who have really fast feet and are intelligent with their movement. And in the past, Joseph has also gassed a little bit, and that can work against him against somebody who's as good a body puncher as Hughie Fury. He's a dangerous combination puncher, and he's a good body puncher. That being said, both of these guys are young, talented, and they're improving. So who knows what improvements they'll have made and what adjustments are going to be made, when exactly those adjustments are going to be evident on a given fight night. Different fighters bring out different things in their opponents. So what we see, who's anybody's guess. This is heavyweight boxing, though. And on any given night, one punch is all it takes to turn the tide. I wouldn't count out Joseph Parker by any stretch of the imagination. I'm only saying that the challenger has an excellent chance of winning on points if he stays within himself and fights his fight. And all that being said, with Joseph Parker's hand speed and his power and his focus, he could just as well knock Hughie Fury out. We've never really seen either guy badly hurt. Yet another thing that makes this fascinating. Personally, I can't wait for this fight. A lot of good fights coming up in the next month, 2 months. We got this one. We got Klitschko Joshua. I'll have a video out pretty soon on Canelo against Chavez Jr. I'm going to do a video, too, I think, on Martin Murray against Gabe Rosado. That should be entertaining, too. So a lot of good things happening in boxing. Again, thanks to everybody for listening and interacting. Straight right boxing talk. I hope you're all doing well.